Women over 60. Never accept any man who does these 5 things or you'll regret it. Did you know that nearly 70% of women over 60 report that they have stayed silent in relationships just to keep the peace? And here's the striking part. It wasn't because they doubted themselves. It was because they had been manipulated into questioning whether their pain was valid in the first place. This silence often begins subtly, with small comments wrapped in charm or humor. A man may say, "Don't take it so personally," or "I'm just being honest." At first, it might even seem harmless, but hidden inside those words is a subtle weapon, a way of dismissing your feelings while cloaking criticism as truth. The danger in dating after 60 is that this kind of disrespect can wear a very convincing disguise. It doesn't storm into your life like obvious cruelty. It seeps in gently, wrapped in warmth and charm, until you start questioning yourself instead of questioning him. I remember Helen, a woman from my walking group. Sharp mind, warm smile, a woman who had rebuilt herself after losing her husband. When she finally opened her heart again, she met a man who seemed ideal. Well-read, attentive, funny. A man who could make her laugh and keep her company. At first, we celebrated her new happiness. But then, the compliments began to bend. He would say things like, "You're lovely even if you're not exactly petite," or "You ramble a little, but it's cute." To an outsider, those comments may sound small, even affectionate, but over time, they had an effect. I noticed Helen shrinking. Little by little, she laughed things off, but her laughter sounded tighter. She began sitting quieter at lunch. She fixed her hair more often, as though she was suddenly unsure of herself. The glow that had returned to her, after years of grief, slowly began to dim. Not all at once, but like a lamp losing power. That's the quiet erosion of disrespect, disguised as honesty. It doesn't leave bruises you can point to. It leaves self-doubt, slowly teaching you to accept less while believing it's love. Here's the truth. A good man does not use honesty as a weapon. Real honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, makes you feel safe, respected, and seen. It may challenge you, but it never belittles you. It never makes you laugh to cover hurt. It never forces you to shrink. And after 60, when your voice, your experience, and your dignity are your most valuable treasures, you should never allow a man to convince you that harshness is the same as truth. You've earned the right to peace, not to excuses. There is no age at which you should have to explain why your dignity matters. You don't owe silence for the sake of keeping peace. You don't owe tolerance for the sake of companionship. And you certainly don't owe any man the comfort of believing that cruelty wrapped in honesty is acceptable. Disrespect, no matter how softly it's delivered, is still disrespect. And in the second half of life, where peace is priceless, you cannot afford to let someone else's sharp words bleed you dry. But words are not the only way control enters a relationship. Sometimes the power struggle doesn't come through tone or comments, it comes quietly, through money. Deal breaker. Number 2. Never accept financial exploitation or control. We often hear that love is built on trust, and that's true. Trust is the foundation of any lasting relationship. But when trust becomes one-sided, when it becomes entangled with money in a way that strips away your autonomy, it ceases to be trust. It becomes control. Control with a smile. Control that looks like generosity on the surface, but is, in truth, a leash tied around your freedom. Among women over 60, financial exploitation happens far more often than many of us want to admit. It can start innocently. A man offers to handle the bills, so you don't have to worry, or he assures you he's protecting you from financial stress. Perhaps he positions himself as generous, stable, the kind of man who will take care of everything. At first, it feels reassuring, but slowly, your financial clarity begins to blur. Maybe you stop asking questions out of politeness. Maybe you feel ungrateful for wanting transparency. Maybe you're embarrassed to admit you don't fully understand the arrangements. And before long, you find that what was supposed to be love and partnership has become dependence. The Roman philosopher Seneca once wrote, "A gift consists not in what is done or given, but in the intention of the giver." If the intention behind a man's financial involvement is power rather than partnership, then it's not a gift at all. It's a leash. Too many women in senior dating stories have surrendered their financial control because someone appeared confident, generous, or stable, only to later discover that generosity came with invisible strings attached. Here's the truth. Dignity does not come with strings. Real generosity never demands your silence, your submission, or your surrender. It never requires you to give up your equal voice in decisions that affect your life. Financial partnership should be about clarity, equality, and respect, not about control. It is never too late to learn the language of money, to set boundaries, and to understand your rights. The numbers in your bank account matter less than the freedom they represent. Money used as a tool of silence is one of the most dangerous forms of control because it hides behind the appearance of kindness. A man who truly loves you will encourage transparency. He'll invite you into every conversation, share every detail, and respect your autonomy. He won't ever make you feel like you have to trade access to your own life for the illusion of security. When financial safety is secure, another form of danger can quietly slip into a relationship, often without you realizing it at first. It doesn't come through your bank account or your bills, but through your connections to the world around you. And the truth is, for women over 60 who are seeking companionship after years of independence, caregiving, or grief, this particular trap can feel deceptively flattering in the beginning. But over time, it can cost you something more valuable than money. It can cost you your community, your friendships, and even your sense of self. Deal breaker number 3, never accept isolation from your support. Network isolation almost never arrives loudly. It comes in whispers, in words that at first sound like affection. They don't really understand you like I do. Or, why do you need anyone else when you already have me? These phrases can feel romantic, as if you finally found someone who values you so deeply that your presence alone is enough. And in the vulnerable excitement of rediscovering love later in life, especially after long stretches of loneliness, it can be tempting to believe that devotion like this is proof of something rare. But what begins as attention can quickly turn into control. I'll never forget my friend Mary Ann, who was widowed in her early 60s. She had spent years rebuilding her confidence, keeping herself busy with friends, volunteering, and travel. Eventually, she decided to try online dating and met a man who seemed to bring light back into her life. He was attentive, affectionate, and made her feel like she was the center of his world. At first, we were thrilled for her. Her laughter returned, her energy lifted, and she seemed to glow again. But little by little, something changed. She began missing our Sunday brunches. She answered calls less often. She explained that he simply wanted more of her time, and she didn't want to disappoint him. Months later, she confided something that made my heart sink. He doesn't really like it when I talk to people from my past. He says it keeps me from being present with him. That was the moment I knew this wasn't love. This was isolation, disguised as intimacy. And this is how it happens. You begin trimming your life down, piece by piece, until everything that once grounded you, the friends, the hobbies, the family traditions, are set aside for the sake of one man's approval. Your world shrinks, not expands. Even your voice becomes quieter, less certain, as if you're slowly disappearing into someone else's frame. For women over 60, this kind of subtle control is particularly dangerous because it can feel flattering. After years of carrying others, after decades of being the giver, it can feel intoxicating to be so wanted, so claimed. But there is a fine line between being cherished and being consumed. Real love does not ask you to cut off the people who matter most. It does not make you choose between companionship and community. It doesn't resent your friendships, your family ties, your church group, or your sisterhood. Instead, it welcomes them. It respects them. It makes space for them in your shared life. The ancient philosopher Epictetus once said, "The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best." If a man tries to separate you from those very people, he is not lifting you higher. He is pulling you into isolation where his influence can dominate unchecked. And this is never love. It's dependency disguised as closeness. The right partner will want to meet your circle. He will want to earn your daughter's trust, share meals with your oldest friend, and see the joy you feel when surrounded by people who know you best. If instead, he makes excuses, discourages connections, or positions himself as the only one you need, then he isn't adding to your life. He's quietly subtracting from it. Deal breaker number 4. Never accept emotional manipulation or guilt. The next danger doesn't necessarily cut you off from others. Instead, it cuts you off from yourself. Emotional manipulation is subtle, and often women who've experienced it aren't even sure what to call it. They just describe feeling drained, confused, or unlike themselves when they're with someone. This is because manipulation rarely shows up as overt cruelty. More often, it arrives in the form of guilt that creeps in like fog, soft and hard to see through, until one day you realize you've lost your own clarity. In senior dating, manipulation often wears the mask of affection. A man may say things like, "I just miss you when you're not around," or "You're all I have," or "It hurts when you put other people before me." At first, those statements sound like the words of someone deeply invested in you, someone who values your presence. But soon you realize they aren't about love at all. They're about control. The underlying message is, if you don't give me all of yourself, you are failing me. For women over 60, especially those who've spent decades as caregivers, raising children, tending to spouses, or supporting aging parents, this form of control is particularly effective because it exploits your most natural instinct to nurture, to comfort, to ease someone else's pain. When a man pulls on those strings, you respond without thinking. You bend your schedule, soften your boundaries, silence your needs, not because you're weak, but because you're generous. Yet generosity without reciprocity becomes self-erasure. I've come to think of guilt as emotional fog. It doesn't slam doors or ignite arguments. Instead, it slowly clouds your vision until you no longer see where his needs end and yours begin. Before you know it, you're apologizing for things that aren't your fault. You're afraid to ask for space. You're second-guessing your right to rest or say no. And one of the clearest red flags of emotional manipulation is this: you begin to feel guilty simply for having needs of your own. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." A manipulative man, on the other hand, keeps you emotionally off balance. He thrives on your uncertainty because it makes you more compliant. He counts on your empathy becoming your silence, and he subtly convinces you that his emotional storms are your responsibility to soothe. But here's the truth you need to hold tightly. After 60, your emotional ease is non-negotiable. Life has already given you storms. Love, at this stage, should feel like calm weather, not chaos. It should feel like trust, not guilt. It should allow you to breathe freely and fully in someone's presence while still feeling like yourself. If a man uses guilt to block your boundaries, silence your voice, or make you question your right to ask for what you need, then what he offers is not love. It's emotional control. And guilt, while it may keep you close for a time, will never make you whole. Deal breaker number 5. Never accept disregard for your health and well-being. The final deal breaker is one of the most overlooked, yet one of the most critical. Because while love can be emotional and spiritual, it is also physical. And the question is this: what kind of man stays close when you are not at your best? Not when you're dressed up and full of energy, but when you're tired, when you're in pain, when your body needs patience instead of pressure. I think of my friend Deborah, 72, brilliant and full of life, but living with chronic arthritis. She met a man after moving into a retirement community. At first, he was attentive and sweet, seeming to care for her deeply, but it became clear over time that his interest was conditional. When she was cheerful and active, he was present. But when she admitted she was tired or needed to slow down, his tone changed. He would say things like, "Don't make your health your whole personality," or "You just need to push through it." Slowly, she began hiding her discomfort just to avoid his disapproval. Until one day, trying to keep up with him on a hike, she fell because she hadn't felt safe enough to admit she needed to stop. That fall became her wake-up call. Senior romance is not about pretending you're still 40. It's about finding someone who honors the stage of life you're truly in, body, mind, and spirit. Your health is not an inconvenience. It is part of your truth. And any relationship that dismisses your needs, mocks your limitations, or pressures you to perform is not a relationship built on love. It is a performance you're forced to maintain until you break. Real love slows down when you do. It asks how you're feeling and listens for the answer. It treats your body not as a burden, but as a reality worth honoring. For women over 60, especially those living with chronic illness, fatigue, or recovery, this is not optional. It's essential. You should never have to choose between companionship and your well-being. The right partner will support both. The closing reflection: love as sanctuary. So here we are, at the heart of it all. After everything you've carried, everything you've endured, and everything you've built, the truth is clear. Dating after 60 is not about settling. It is about sovereignty. You are not here to shrink yourself for someone else's comfort. You are not here to manage someone else's moods or excuse bad behavior with "he's from a different generation." You are here to be seen, cherished, and respected. Every woman I know who has rediscovered herself after 60 has said some version of the same thing. I will never lose myself again. And that is the essence of these 5 boundaries. You deserve relationships that add to your life, not ones that erode it piece by piece. You deserve a love that feels like a mirror, not a maze. You deserve a man who honors your voice, your energy, your values, your body, and your circle. If you recognize yourself in any of these signs, take heart. You are not too old to walk away. You are not too late to begin again. You are not alone. In fact, the very act of recognizing these truths is proof of your wisdom and strength. And if today's message gave you clarity, confidence, or even a spark of courage, then I invite you to stay connected here at Wise Life After 60. Because this is where we honor the quiet truths of self-worth, the power of boundaries, and the kind of love that feels like sanctuary. At this stage of life, love should not feel like work, confusion, or sacrifice. It should feel like ease. It should feel like exhaling after years of holding your breath. It should feel like home. And after everything you've given, everything you've survived, and everything you've built, you deserve nothing less.